I'm sitting alone at my kitchen table as I say this. The house is quiet in a way it never used to be. Not the peaceful kind of quiet people talk about when they imagine old age. This is the kind that presses against your chest, the kind that reminds you that time has already taken most of what it plans to take. I'm 82 years old now, and I was divorced at 76. People always assume the divorce was the hardest part of my life. They lower their voices when they say the word, like it still has the power to wound me. They imagine screaming arguments, slammed doors, lawyers, bitterness. They imagine regret arriving the moment the papers were signed. They're wrong. The divorce wasn't the worst thing. The worst thing came much later, when I realized how long I had disappeared before I ever left. I married young. That's how it was done. I was 21, fresh-faced, careful, eager to do things the right way. He was steady, reliable. A man who paid bills on time and believed problems should be handled quietly. People approved of him, which felt important back then. Approval felt like safety. We built a life that looked good from the outside. A house with neutral walls. Children raised to be polite. Holidays that followed a schedule. I became very good at being needed. I cooked, cleaned, organized, remembered birthdays, kept track of appointments, made sure everyone else's life ran smoothly. I mistook usefulness for love. Years passed like that. Decades, really. I learned not to ask for much. Not because he was cruel, he wasn't, but because asking felt like burdening someone who already seemed tired of listening. So I learned to swallow things, small disappointments at first, then larger ones. I told myself this was marriage, this was adulthood, this was responsibility. People praise women like that. They say you're strong, selfless, dependable. I wore those words like medals, not realizing they were slowly weighing me down. By my 50s, I had stopped recognizing myself, not in a dramatic way. There was no single moment where I said, I am unhappy. It was quieter than that. I just stopped noticing my own reactions, stopped having opinions out loud, stopped dreaming in any direction that wasn't practical. I told myself it was too late to change anything, that I had made my choices. That stability mattered more than desire. That gratitude should be enough. I stayed married not because I was loved deeply, but because leaving felt irresponsible. Because I was afraid of becoming a cautionary tale. Because I didn't want to disrupt the lives of people who seemed comfortable with who I had become. And so I stayed. I stayed while my voice grew softer. I stayed while my laughter became rare. I stayed while entire versions of myself quietly expired without ceremony. By the time the children were grown, we were strangers sharing routines. We spoke about groceries and weather and doctor's appointments. We stopped arguing because we had stopped expecting anything. People think silence is peace. It isn't. Sometimes it's just resignation. The idea of divorce didn't arrive suddenly. It crept in through exhaustion, through the realization that if this was the rest of my life, I would never again feel known, not even by myself. When I finally said the word out loud, divorce, it sounded absurd. Who divorces in their 70s? Who appends a life that late? Friends were concerned. Some were kind. Some were judgmental. Many were confused. I was confused too. Signing the papers didn't feel dramatic. It felt administrative. A clerk, a pen, a stack of documents. I walked out into the sunlight afterward and waited for something. Relief, terror, grief. What I felt instead was empty. That emptiness frightened me more than sadness would have. Living alone for the first time in decades was disorienting. The quiet followed me from room to room. There was no one to check in with, no one to perform usefulness for. Without realizing it, I had built my entire identity around being part of a unit. Alone, I felt unfinished. People expect a late life divorce to be liberating. They imagine reinvention, dating, travel, bold choices. That wasn't my experience. What came first was mourning, not just for the marriage, but for the woman I never allowed myself to become. I mourned the years I stayed silent to keep the peace, the conversations I avoided, the anger I swallowed because it felt unbecoming. I mourned the fact that I had waited until my body was already slowing down to finally ask what I wanted. That's when I understood something painful. The divorce didn't cost me my life. Staying did. I don't say that with bitterness. My ex-husband wasn't a villain. He lived exactly as he knew how. The truth is harder than blame. The truth is that I participated in my own disappearance. I thought endurance was virtue. I thought sacrifice guaranteed meaning. No one tells you that you can be responsible and still betray yourself. After the divorce, I tried to reconnect with old interests. I bought books I never read. I joined groups I didn't feel brave enough to speak in. I told myself it was too late, then scolded myself for thinking that way. Growth at this age is slow and awkward. It doesn't look like transformation montages. It looks like small, uncertain steps and frequent loneliness. Sometimes regret hits me in waves. Not about leaving, but about waiting. Waiting for permission that never came. Waiting for a sign that I was allowed to want more. Waiting for life to feel less heavy without ever asking why it did. I think about the woman I was at 40, at 50, at 60. I want to reach back through time and tell her that discomfort is not the same as failure, that choosing yourself does not make you selfish, that being unhappy quietly does not earn you a reward. People still ask me if I regret the divorce. I tell them the truth. I regret not listening sooner. I regret believing that longevity meant success. I regret confusing stability with fulfillment. I regret teaching my daughters, without words, that endurance mattered more than honesty. if there's wisdom in old age, it's this time doesn't ask if you're ready. It just keeps moving, and it takes pieces of you, whether you're paying attention or not. I don't know how much time I have left. None of us do. But I know this, I am more present now than I was for most of my marriage. I notice my own thoughts. I allow myself preferences. I speak, even when my voice shakes. That may not sound like much, but after a lifetime of disappearing, it feels radical. The divorce didn't save me. It didn't fix everything. It didn't magically give me joy. What it did was force me to meet myself honestly, late and unprepared. And that meeting, awkward, painful, overdue, was the beginning of something real. If you're listening to this and you're younger, don't wait for crisis to give you permission. Don't confuse silence with harmony. Don't build a life so carefully that there's no room left for you inside it. And if you're older, like me, and you think it's too late, know this. It's not too late to tell the truth. Not to others. To yourself. The worst thing wasn't the divorce. The worst thing was all the years I stayed and slowly vanished, believing that was what love was supposed to look like. I know better now, even if I learned it late.